For over 30 years, he was the undisputed king of cultural cool, a maestro of music, fashion, and branding who turned swagger into a billion-dollar business. Sean Diddy Combs wasn't just a rapper or a producer, he was an architect of the American dream, a self-made mogul who preached a gospel of relentless ambition. From the shiny suit era of the 90s to the boardrooms of corporate America, you just couldn't escape his influence. But behind the velvet ropes and champagne toasts, a very different story was taking shape. A story of power and control, of secrets and of fear. This is how a celebrated empire, built on what looked like visionary growth, became the center of a federal investigation that threatens to expose a horrifying truth. We'll unpack the shocking allegations, the controversial decisions, and the trial that could bring it all crashing down. You can't really grasp how far he fell without understanding just how high he climbed. Sean John Combs started his journey not as a king, but as a hungry, ambitious intern at Uptown Records. He actually got fired, but his drive was something no one could deny. In 1993, he launched Bad Boy Entertainment, and with it, a cultural dynasty. At the heart of it all was an artist who would define an entire era, the notorious B.I.G. Together, Diddy's production and Biggie's raw lyrical genius created a sound that simply took over the airwaves. But Diddy's vision was always bigger than just the music. He was a master of the brand, a pioneer for the artist as mogul blueprint that so many have followed since. While other labels were just focused on albums, Diddy was building an entire world. He didn't just sell records, he sold a lifestyle. This was the era of the shiny suit, of music videos that looked like Hollywood blockbusters, and of a deliberate, unapologetic celebration of Black success. Bad Boy wasn't just a label, it was something to aspire to. His business smarts were the stuff of legend. He launched the Sean John clothing line in 1998, turning his personal style into a commercial powerhouse that reportedly raked in over $525 million a year at its peak. The brand wasn't just sold in stores, it was a cultural statement, even winning a prestigious award from the Council of Fashion Designers of America. Then came the liquor. His partnership with Diageo to market Ciroc vodka was a masterclass in branding. He didn't just endorse the product, he was the product. Parties, events, songs. Ciroc became synonymous with the high life he was selling. The deal was incredibly profitable, reportedly earning him tens of millions every year and cementing his status as a business titan. He kept expanding, launching the Revolt TV network in 2013, a media company aimed right at a young, multicultural audience. By 2022, Forbes estimated his net worth was sitting at around $1 billion. He wasn't just in the culture, he was the culture. He produced for legends like Mary J. Blige, discovered artists like Usher, and gave a platform to countless others. He was the ultimate gatekeeper, the man with the Midas touch, whose empire seemed like it would grow forever. He had successfully blurred the lines between music, fashion, liquor, and media, creating a multifaceted brand that seemed, for a very long time, completely invincible. For years, rumors and whispers followed Combs, but they were usually written off as the price of fame or the collateral damage of a high-flying lifestyle. But in November 2023, those whispers became a roar. His former partner, the singer Cassandra "Cassie" Ventura, filed a bombshell lawsuit. The 35-page complaint was a harrowing read, accusing Combs of a decade-long cycle of rape, physical violence, and sex trafficking. Ventura, who was just 19 when she signed to Bad Boy, alleged that Combs had complete control over every aspect of her personal and professional life. The lawsuit laid out horrific claims of abuse, stating he would beat her, force her to take drugs, and coerce her into sexual encounters with male sex workers, which he would then film. One of the most disturbing allegations involved an incident where she claimed Combs forced his way into her home and raped her after she tried to end their relationship in 2018. The lawsuit sent shockwaves through the industry. Combs' lawyer immediately fired back, denying the offensive and outrageous claims. Then, just 24 hours after it was filed, the lawsuit was settled for an undisclosed amount. It was later revealed during his trial that the settlement was for $20 million. While the settlement stopped the civil case, it did the exact opposite of quieting the story. It was a catalyst. For many, the quick settlement wasn't an admission of guilt, but it definitely wasn't a sign of innocence either. It showed a crack in the armor of an icon who had seemed untouchable for decades. Months later, in May 2024, the abstract claims in the lawsuit became terrifyingly real. CNN got its hands on a chilling piece of surveillance footage from a Los Angeles hotel dated March 5, 2016. The video, which matched an incident described in Ventura's lawsuit, showed Combs wearing only a towel chasing Ventura down a hallway. He grabs her, throws her to the ground, and kicks her repeatedly. He then tries to drag her back towards a room. The silent, grainy footage was more powerful than any words could be. It was a raw, undeniable picture of violence. After it was released, Combs issued a public apology calling his actions inexcusable and saying he was truly sorry. But for the public and for law enforcement, the video was the point of no return. It gave horrifying weight to the claims that were about to come flooding in. Cassie Ventura's lawsuit didn't just open a crack, it blew the floodgates wide open. In the weeks and months that followed, a cascade of lawsuits were filed against Sean Combs, each one painting a similar, deeply disturbing picture of abuse, control, and exploitation. The allegations stretched back decades, from the 1990s all the way to recent years. A woman, identified only as Jane Doe, filed a suit alleging that Combs and two other men had gang-raped her in his New York studio back in 2003, when she was just 17. Another explosive lawsuit came from a former music producer, Rodney Lil Rod Jones. Jones, who worked on Combs' The Love album, accused the mogul of repeated sexual harassment and assault. His lawsuit claimed he was forced to find sex workers and take part in unwanted sexual acts, and that he was drugged on a regular basis. Jones's complaint also said he had video and audio evidence to back up his claims, including recordings of Combs and his crew involved in illegal activities. And the accusations just kept mounting. Another woman, April Lampros, a former fashion student, alleged Combs had sexually assaulted her multiple times in the mid-1990s. The pattern described across these lawsuits was eerily consistent: lavish parties that allegedly turned into coercive, drug-fueled sex events, often involving sex workers and sometimes even minors. The accusers described a man who allegedly used his incredible power, wealth, and influence to intimidate, manipulate, and ultimately silence his victims. Combs and his legal team denied everything, framing the lawsuits as shameless money grabs from people looking for a quick payday. In a public statement, he declared, "Enough is enough," and vowed to fight to clear his name. But the sheer number and consistency of the claims pointed to something far more sinister than a few opportunistic lawsuits. It suggested a potential pattern of behavior that had been hiding in plain sight for years, protected by a wall of power and a culture of silence. The very industry that had celebrated his every move was now being forced to confront the dark reality of what one of its most powerful figures was being accused of. On March 25, 2024, the storm around Sean Combs escalated from civil lawsuits to a full-blown federal criminal investigation. In a move that felt like something out of a movie, Homeland Security agents conducted simultaneous raids on Combs' massive mansions in Los Angeles and Miami. News helicopters broadcast the dramatic footage live, federal agents in tactical gear swarming the properties, seizing phones, computers, hard drives, anything that could be potential evidence. The raids were a loud and clear signal. The government was taking these accusations very, very seriously. The investigation was focused on sex trafficking. 6 months later, on September 16, 2024, it all came to a head. A federal grand jury in New York indicted Sean Combs. He was arrested and hit with charges of racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking, and transportation for the purposes of prostitution. The indictment was a stunning document. Prosecutors alleged that for decades, Combs had been running his massive business empire as a criminal enterprise. The official document claimed that Combs, as the leader of the Combs enterprise, abused, threatened, and coerced women and others to satisfy his sexual desires and to protect his reputation. This enterprise, prosecutors argued, was involved in a laundry list of crimes, including sex trafficking, kidnapping, bribery, and obstruction of justice. A central piece of the indictment was the description of events called freak-offs. Prosecutors described these as elaborate, often filmed sexual performances that Combs allegedly orchestrated, frequently involving commercial sex workers. The indictment alleged he used drugs to make his victims compliant and subjected them to physical and emotional abuse to force them to participate. The government's top prosecutor for the region, Damian Williams, announced the charges, highlighting just how serious they were and the decades-long pattern of alleged abuse. Combs pleaded not guilty to all charges, but the indictment itself was a catastrophic blow. This wasn't just about individual acts. It was about the alleged weaponization of his entire business structure to commit and cover up horrific crimes. The visionary mogul was now being painted by the federal government as a racketeer, the head of a criminal organization hiding behind the mask of a global brand. The story of Sean Combs brings up some big questions about fame, power, and accountability in the entertainment world. Is this a case of one man's downfall, or does it point to a much deeper problem in the industry? Let us know what you think in the comments. And if you want more deep dives into the stories shaping our culture, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. The legal firestorm immediately tore through the financial empire Combs had spent his entire life building. The brands and institutions that once tripped over themselves to be associated with his name now ran for cover. The fallout was fast and it was brutal. Peloton, the fitness giant, quickly paused the use of all Diddy's music on its platform. The charter school he co-founded in Harlem, Capital Preparatory, cut all ties with him, saying it was for the health of the organization. His honorary degree from his alma mater, Howard University, was taken back. Empower Global, his e-commerce site for Black-owned businesses, saw a mass exodus of partners. At least 18 companies publicly pulled their products, with many founders saying the allegations went directly against their values. But maybe the biggest hit came from the world of fashion and retail. Macy's, a longtime seller of the Sean John brand, dropped the line from its stores. The incredibly lucrative partnership with the spirits giant Diageo, the engine behind his Ciroc and DeLeon brands, had already ended in January 2024 over a separate lawsuit. The end of that deal alone was a huge financial loss, costing him an income stream once valued in the hundreds of millions. His net worth, once pegged by Forbes at a cool $1 billion, plummeted. By 2024, the same publication estimated his fortune had crashed to around $400 million, a staggering loss of more than half his wealth. Even Revolt TV, the media company he was so proud of founding, went through a massive change. Combs stepped down as chairman in late 2023, and by June 2024, it was announced he had sold his majority stake. In a powerful move to completely separate from its founder, the company retired his shares and created a new ownership structure, making its own employees the largest shareholder group, ensuring it remained Black-owned and operated. The empire wasn't just losing money, it was losing its cool. The name Diddy, once a synonym for success and aspiration, was now forever tied to heinous allegations and a federal criminal trial. The visionary had become a pariah. On May 12, 2025, the trial of the United States versus Sean Combs kicked off in a Manhattan federal courtroom. The proceedings, which stretched on for 7 weeks, became a global spectacle, with the world watching as prosecutors tried to prove that one of music's biggest icons was actually the leader of a criminal enterprise. The prosecution called 34 witnesses to the stand, building a case on emotional testimony and hundreds of pieces of evidence. Their narrative was crystal clear. To the public, he was Puff Daddy or Diddy, a cultural icon. But there was another side to him, one prosecutor declared in their opening argument. They argued that Combs systematically used his wealth, his employees, and his influence to orchestrate and hide criminal behavior for years. Key witnesses included several accusers who gave graphic and emotional testimony. Cassie Ventura, a star witness for the prosecution, took the stand and recounted years of alleged physical, emotional, and sexual abuse. Other accusers, some testifying with pseudonyms to protect their identity, described similar patterns of alleged coercion, violence, and being forced into drug-fueled freak-offs. The prosecution's argument was that these weren't consensual parties, but carefully orchestrated performances of sexual activity with commercial sex workers, where victims were manipulated and controlled. The defense, led by attorney Mark Agnifilo, fought back hard. They painted the prosecution's case as a fake trial and a wild exaggeration. Agnifilo argued that the government was trying to criminalize a swinger lifestyle and private consensual relationships. He did not do the things he's charged with, Agnifilo told the jury. He didn't do racketeering, conspiracy, and sex trafficking. The defense tried to frame the relationships as being about love, jealousy, infidelity, and money, not a criminal conspiracy. They cross-examined government witnesses for hours, trying to poke holes in their stories and highlight inconsistencies. Combs himself chose not to take the stand. Closing arguments began in late June 2025. Prosecutors presented Combs as a man who believed he was a god among men, totally above the law. The defense, in turn, mocked the government's case, arguing they were unfairly targeting Combs and turning his unconventional lifestyle into a federal crime. As the case finally went to the jury, the stakes couldn't have been any higher. If convicted, Sean Combs was facing the possibility of life in prison. The story of Sean Combs has become a deeply unsettling tale of two completely conflicting legacies. On one hand, you have the visionary, the self-made billionaire who smashed barriers and redefined what it meant to be a mogul in the modern age. He's the man who created the soundtrack for a generation and wrote the blueprint for entrepreneurial success that inspired millions. That legacy is real. His impact on music, fashion, and business is a fact of cultural history. But now, there is another story, a much darker one that threatens to erase all of it. It's the story told by dozens of accusers and prosecuted by the United States government. A story of a predator who allegedly built his empire on a foundation of violence, manipulation, and fear. It describes a man who saw people not as partners, but as property, and who used his immense power not to lift people up, but to control and abuse them. The final verdict in his trial will decide his legal fate, but the court of public opinion has already been shaken to its core. The disturbing allegations and that chilling video evidence have irrevocably destroyed his image, forcing all of us to re-examine his entire career. The whole controversy makes us ask some tough questions about the systems that allow alleged behavior like this to happen. How can a culture of celebrity, wealth, and power let such darkness fester for so long right out in the open? Whatever the outcome, the shiny suits have been stripped away for good, leaving behind a legacy that is fractured and forever in dispute. The question isn't whether Sean Diddy Combs can stop or won't stop anymore. The real question is whether the world will ever see him and the empire he built the same way again.